Welcome to our training titled How to Use the Minnesota Incident Reporting System Reports to Evaluate Interfering Behaviors. This training was developed by the Disability Services Division's Community Capacity and Positive Supports team. This training provides an overview of reports in the Minnesota Incident Reporting System, or MIRS, that are available to help service providers evaluate and address critical incidents and interfering behaviors, sometimes also referred to as challenging behaviors. For other information about the MIRS, such as how to create an account and enter data into the system, review the links below this training video. The data outlined in MIRS reports is pulled from submissions of behavior intervention reporting forms, also known as BIRFs, and positive support transition plans. If you are new to MIRS, your reports may appear blank until you start submitting information into the system. Please note, the data previewed in this training is pretend and is not associated with any real people. Also, the reports available in MIRS and titles used may change over time as DHS works to update the MIRS to reflect user feedback. The purpose of the reports in MIRS is to help teams use data to determine what steps they should take to address often complex issues. Effective data collection is essential for assessing behavior, monitoring progress, and making informed decisions. One way to evaluate behavior is to gather CABC data. The first C stands for context, or what was happening before the behavior. For example, this data might include where the person was, who was around, what the setting was like, or what the plans for the day were. The A stands for antecedent, or what immediately happened before the behavior. Some examples of antecedents include the person being told they can't do something, a roommate coming home, or stubbing a toe. The B stands for behavior. What exactly did the person do? For example, a behavior could be described as, without speaking, the person grabbed a kitchen glass off the counter and threw it at their roommate on the couch. And the second C stands for consequence, or what happened immediately after the behavior. This might include things like what the person did, what others did in response to the person, or changes to the setting or situation. The reports in MIRS offer some common CABC data that behavior professionals often collect when evaluating critical incidents. On the following slides, there are specific examples of how to use this data to make informed decisions. Keep in mind, the MIRS can only create reports based on the content entered, and teams may need to do additional data gathering and consult with behavior professionals to fully understand why interfering behaviors are occurring and how to prevent future behaviors. The first report we will review in this training is the location summary. As the title suggests, this report pulls data from BIRFs to summarize where incidents are occurring. Providers can use this information to evaluate what is happening at a location. For example, a person might engage in interfering behaviors at home, but not when they are at a day program. When behaviors vary across different settings, providers should investigate the differences of these locations and identify any location-specific triggers, differences in staffing or interaction styles, differences in scheduling or activities available, and any other unique location-specific characteristics. By analyzing these differences, teams can either develop targeted interventions for specific locations or confirm that the setting is not a significant factor in the person's behaviors. Here is an example of how a team could use the location-specific data that is available in the MIRS to work together to address an interfering behavior that happens at a specific location. Rachel has a history of fecal smearing at home, but not at her day program. The team suspects the behavior is related to sensory needs or discomfort, and they have already ruled out any medical concerns by discussing and meeting with Rachel's medical doctors. The team talks to staff working at both locations and learns that Rachel's day program is very busy and offers many sensory activity options, whereas at home, Rachel typically has more downtime. They also learn that the day program offers wet wipes and assists Rachel with cleanup after a bowel movement. The team decides to take 4 actions to address the behavior. 1. They ask the lead agency to assist with finding an occupational therapist who can help the team develop additional sensory activities at home. 2. They brainstorm ideas and implement new activities to help keep Rachel busier on days she stays home. 3. The program supervisor starts purchasing wet wipes and gloves for Rachel and her caregivers. And 4. Rachel's caregivers start assisting her when she has a bowel movement and teaching her how to use the wet wipes independently. While taking the above actions, Rachel's team should continue to take and monitor data and adjust their interventions as needed. The next report, titled Tracking When Incidents Occur, helps providers identify if there is a more likely time of day when a person might engage in an interfering behavior. Knowing the time can give teams a chance to make advanced arrangements to potentially prevent any incidents from occurring. For example, a team uses the MIRS data to identify that a person they serve, Abigail, is most likely to engage in aggressive behaviors in the afternoon, typically after 3:30 p.m. and before 6:30 p.m. First, the team meets to determine how they should proceed. They thoroughly collect data by reviewing the existing MIRS to better understand the nature and context of Abigail's behaviors. They also discuss what her typical afternoon routine looks like, ensuring they get multiple perspectives, including Abigail's. They learn that this time frame coincides with her return from school and is the period before dinner. A primary caregiver notes 2 important observations. 1, Abigail has no interfering behaviors after dinner, and 2, she doesn't consistently eat the snacks that are offered and available to her. Based on this information, the team can develop a hypothesis. Providing more preferred snacks might help reduce aggressive behaviors during this time frame. The team then decides to implement an intervention where more preferred snacks are offered and available to Abigail after school. They continue to collect data and report incidents in the MIRS, and they plan to follow up with a review in 1 month with the whole team there to assess the intervention's effectiveness. After a month, they revisit the MIRS data to analyze any changes in behavior frequency, determine if the intervention was successful, and make any further data-driven adjustments that are needed. Please note, a new intervention strategy might not always work, and that is normal. There are many things that influence behavior, so don't be discouraged if you don't figure it out right away. For example, with Abigail, her interfering behavior might have nothing to do with snacks and might instead relate to her dislike of doing homework, being upset from things that happened at school, the effects of a medication wearing off earlier than expected, or dozens of other things. One of the best things you can do when things don't work out is to continue collecting data and trying to find patterns that might give you clues. The next report, titled What Led Up to Incidents and Strategies Tried, pulls 3 narrative descriptions from the birth form, including the environment description, the team's description of what led up to and happened during the behavior incident, and the team's de-escalation efforts. Not all incidents require this data, so sometimes sections of this report might appear blank. When the data is provided, service providers are encouraged to look for patterns in what led to and happened during behavioral incidents. The next report, titled What Happened After Each Incident, might help teams identify patterns of successful strategies that have worked to resolve or end interfering behaviors. For example, a team might be able to tell from this report that a person is more likely to calm down when given quiet time and personal space than when staff tried to talk to them about the incident. It can also help identify when teams might be accidentally reinforcing interfering behaviors. For example, if a person receives an enjoyed, sugary treat to help them calm down from an interfering behavior, that might actually encourage the person to engage in the behavior more frequently. If a team finds they are accidentally encouraging the interfering behavior, they can take steps to mitigate, such as giving the person access to the preferred item at times they are not engaging in interfering behaviors, reinforcing desired behaviors much more frequently than interfering behaviors, and identifying the function of or reason for the behavior and addressing that need or purpose through other support strategies. This next report lists injuries to people served. The chart includes where the injury happened, the type of injury, and the care provided. If a team finds that a person has been injured several times over the past year, or severely injured during even one incident, they may need to analyze those incidents to determine if there are additional steps the team can take to prevent future injuries. Other support professionals and clinicians might need to be consulted. When evaluating, keep in mind that the person has a right to take some risks in their life, which might sometimes result in minor injury. However, if the person has been seriously injured, the team should meet to discuss potential changes to the person's care plan. As caregivers, we do not want to see anyone be injured. When there is a pattern of injury, the team may decide to investigate further to find out why injuries are occurring and how they can be prevented. If you are working with someone who has a pattern of injuring themselves or others, here are some steps the team may consider taking. Document carefully. Write down details of each injury, being sure to note any potential patterns or triggers that you observe. Include the date, the time, the location, what was going on when the injury occurred, what the behavior looked like that caused the injury, and so on. Seek medical evaluation. Discuss the injury pattern with healthcare providers and schedule a comprehensive medical checkup to explore any potential underlying medical or pain-related issues. Conduct a functional behavior assessment with the help of a qualified professional. This is also known as an FBA. An FBA is an assessment that uses a variety of data, including observations, interviews, and historical review, to identify possible reasons or why the behavior is occurring. An FBA can help look for communication or unmet needs that might be causing distress. Information about FBAs can be found in the MIRS within the Application Instructions dashboard. Develop a support plan. A support plan should be developed from the results of the FBA and should include strategies to prevent injuries, ensure safe environments, and appropriate interventions, and include positive behavior support techniques. Above all, take a collaborative approach. This means involving all caregivers, support team members, and the person receiving support. All team members should be allowed to share their observations, their strategies, and communicate openly. Also, remember to regularly review and adjust the support plan. Remember, safety comes first, but it must be balanced with giving the person opportunities to make their own choices. We must approach with compassion and understanding for all involved parties, and we must focus on prevention and support, not punishment. The next report, titled 911 Calls by Person, can help teams identify when additional or modified behavior interventions are needed, determine when they might need to have a meeting with emergency responders, and evaluate the relationship between 911 calls and emergency manual restraint. For example, if a team reduces manual restraint but increases 911 calls, that might indicate a need for additional behavior evaluation. The next report, titled Incidents Involving Property Destruction, can help teams plan appropriate budgets and evaluate when environmental modifications might be needed. It might also help teams identify things to avoid, such as parking staff cars near the home. You might find that some sections of this report will be blank, and that is okay, because description questions do not need to be answered for every birth. This next report, titled Monthly Summary of All Births for Past Year, can help providers identify if the number of incidents are increasing or decreasing for their organization, which might help providers make organizational decisions like whether to hire more behavior professionals. When incidents might be common. For example, sometimes the frequency of interfering behaviors increases in December and January around holiday times. Another example providers that serve children sometimes see is increases or decreases in interfering behaviors when school starts or stops for the year. Not all providers will be able to gather insights from this report, but it is available as needed. This next report, titled How Long Each Manual Restraint Lasted, can help service providers determine if restraint use is increasing or decreasing in duration. A decrease in duration over time might indicate that the positive support strategies are working, whereas an increase in duration might indicate that the strategies need to be updated. Providers might also need to investigate holds that are unusually lengthy for a person receiving support. This next report, titled Monthly Summary by Licensed Site for Past Year, can help supervisors and managers determine which sites might be struggling and need additional support and resources. This report will be most useful to service providers when staff enter a service or site-specific license number on a BIRF instead of a broader parent license for the organization. This report, titled Staff Injuries, is intended to help service providers identify when their staff may need additional support and resources. It might also be helpful in making human resource and insurance decisions. When a staff member is injured, it can be helpful to show compassion for the injury, even when minor. Review benefit options with the person and assist them with finding care and counseling as needed. Review the incident with the person and develop a plan to avoid future injuries. Good plans to prevent future injuries should feel feasible and reasonable to the people responsible for carrying out the plans, and include periodic check-ins with the staff member to discuss if the plan seems to be working. If a care plan is carried out successfully, but staff continue to receive injuries, teams are encouraged to consult a behavior professional to help with the situation. If providing disability waiver services, teams might also want to consider asking the lead agency about making a disability waiver rate system exception request to request additional funding for more staff, more highly trained staff, or other necessary supports. This next report, titled Staff Involved in Each Incident, might be helpful to service providers in identifying when a staff person might be experiencing burnout, when additional support and resources might be needed, who the person receiving services is more likely to target during an interfering behavior, possible abuse or maltreatment situations, and staff that might need a raise because they are more willing and more skilled at handling interfering behaviors. For this data set, be sure to connect with the staff, the person receiving services, and other involved parties to gather more information before jumping to any conclusions. These next two reports help providers count the number of emergency uses of manual restraint, or EUMR, in the past 90 or 180 days. Counting EUMR is necessary to identify when a positive support transition plan must be submitted to DHS. A positive support transition plan is required after 3 EUMRs in 90 days or 4 EUMRs in 180 days. If your report shows any counts meeting that threshold, fill out and submit DHS Form 6810. Instructions for the Positive Support Transition Plan can be found under DHS Form 6810B. Links to both documents can be found in the MIRS within the Application Instructions dashboard. This next and final report covered in this training is titled Due Dates of Positive Support Transition Plan Reviews. This is DHS Form 6810A. This report pulls data from submitted positive support transition plans and calculates when quarterly reviews are due. The purpose of a positive support transition plan review is to evaluate data to determine if the support strategies listed in the plan appear to be working. When the due date arrives, service providers should work with teams to complete DHS Form 6810A and then use MIRS to submit that form to DHS within 30 days of the end of the quarter. Thank you for taking time to learn about the different reports in MIRS and how to use them to prevent interfering behaviors. If you have any questions or suggestions for the reports, please contact the MIRS training team at PositiveSupports@state.mn.us.